Hey, Mike.
Hey, Jeremy.
Hey, it's Jeremy.
Hey, it's Mike.
We are the Fighting Photographers.
A podcast where we talk photography, gear, and life. Hi, I'm Mike.
Hey, it's Jeremy.
We're the Fighting Photographers.
Welcome to another thing where we do our thing. And we talk about things.
We are casting our ideas.
We are casting so hard.
So hard, Jeremy.
Man, I love to cast.
I hope somebody out there actually cares how hard we're casting. Because as of right now, I'm not convinced we even care.
I'm not. No, I'm convinced we don't care.
Right. Well, that's a little disappointing.
Now you know how my parents feel.
Oh. Drink. Or coffee.
Coffee.
It's about that time. It's fine. So what do we got on the calendar for today?
So in our first episode, we talked a bit about each other and ourselves.
And one another. Each other. Yep.
But,
absolutely.
No, but during that episode, we did mention gear, whether or not gear matters. And you see this come up all the time in social media and in forums. And
what lens is that?
How
did you edit that?
What lens should I get? Which body should I get? And you'll get people who are willing to give advice and try to dig a little bit deeper. I'm always disappointed that more folks don't go, well, it depends. What are you looking to shoot? They just start throwing out an opinion. Oh, you should go for this.
Yeah.
You don't know if he wants to shoot or her wants to shoot, if they want to shoot sports or just their kids running around or portraits or dogs or landscapes.
So are you saying gear matters?
I'm saying gear absolutely matters. And I'll go so far as to say that not only does gear matter depending upon what you want to shoot, because I think that's obvious. Right? Some things are going to perform differently depending upon what you want to shoot. So
it's not just get the most expensive camera and because it's the best camera. That's not the case.
No, and I don't think cost equals best at the end of the day, and definitely doesn't determine what's best.
Absolutely.
Depending upon the person.
Well, and that's we've been doing this long enough. We're not the oldest guys in the game, but we're not young kids. Yeah, you're pretty old. You're right. That's true. But we're not kids anymore either. We've been around the block a couple times, and so we've seen the changes. We've seen the trends shifting, and I think back when I first started, and the whole argument of is film's better than digital. It was back then. It was better back then.
In the day. It was.
Digital was not good. It was new but no one knew what they were doing. It was like we were a bunch of idiots with didn't know what Photoshop was and didn't so we were just playing and messing up and making horrible decisions that should never have those photos should never have been edited that way.
And it's come a long ways from I obviously learned on film because there was no digital back then.
Because you are that much older than me.
I am that much older. I've learned of the darkroom. I've rolled film. And
believe it or not, I have taken one photo class in my life, and it was a black and white film class. We had to develop, roll all the darkroom. So the only class I've actually ever taken in photography was still to this day one of the coolest ones because it got into the darkroom, which was I miss it. And, digital is a blast, but I love that I at least have that little taste of what photography quote unquote used to be. I know people still shoot film,
but I would say that I'm glad film is dying.
Yeah,
I mean, there's a number of reasons.
Half the internet just stopped listening.
I don't care.
I should say half of our listeners, 25 and under, stopped just
all the hipster film shooters. See who I can offend with that one.
How many more people can we isolate?
No, but someone, back in the day, that's all there was. It took so long to see your images. If you couldn't process yourself, you had to send it somewhere. And then there's the chemicals involved.
Oh.
If you've ever had to deal with cleaning those out on a repeated basis and dealing with, yeah, sure, there's a lot of, I'm not going to get into, an environmental discussion on this photography cast. But, there's a lot of that. You don't have that with digital. You have a camera, you take the picture, you plug it into your computer, and you have it right there. You don't.
And you talk technology. My camera sends the photo straight to my phone now. Like I don't even have to go. I don't even have to plug it into the computer if I don't want to. It's beyond instant gratification.
Yeah. Is there a downside to that? Yeah, people get lazy. They shoot. They chimp, right? And so we used to always refer
20
to
frames a second. I can hold the button down and probably get something.
Yeah, spray and pray. And you see a lot of photographers, in sports and wildlife, amateur photographers that'll do that. They'll go and they'll just hold the shutter until it dies, until the buffer can't. But if you go and watch a professional photographer work, they don't. It's very short bursts. You can do 20 frames a second, but they're still going and letting off.
Sure.
Right. They're not holding it down, hoping they're understanding what's happening at the same time.
Yep.
And their gear starts to matter again.
Yeah.
Right. So
well, and that's, they say for me shooting people, focusing on people more than like in portraiture and wedding and studio work. When I was couple years back before I switched over to mirrorless, I was shooting on, Canon 5D Mark IIIs. Still to this day, that camera lasted probably longer than it should have. There were a lot of, a lot of people jumped ship during the 5D Mark III days because they were waiting for something better, but that's not the point. Canon's redeemed themselves finally. Thank you. We love you. But man, those are some hard years for Canon shooters.
No. And now you've just made all the Sony fans angry.
That's because they know I'm right. They had their day, but now they're like, oh, Canon's actually, now I have a reason to go back to Canon.
Photography and video both. It's starting to tighten up again.
I met my first friend who left Canon to Sony, rightfully so, like most people did, jumped ship. Had a great few years, and they just came back to Canon with the R5s.
That's right.
Because back then though, when I upgraded when I had my 5D Mark III, and then I in my mind as a professional photographer, I was like, I need the flagship. I need the 1DX. I am a professional. I need the biggest camera, and in my mind, the biggest, the best. And it was their most expensive camera. It's funny though, because it was less megapixels, et cetera, technically a lower resolution than my 5D Mark III, which is a 4-year older camera. But in my mind, I was like, I'm a professional. I need this camera. Yep. But that was, and again, in all the years that I had that 1DX, I used that high speed shutter a handful of times. Maybe it was a, silly, jumping photo of 20 people in a wedding party. And I was like, okay, 20 people, adults can't jump on the count of 3 together. So I've got to shoot high speed, whatever. But a handful of times I used it more to show off when I'd be like, hey, look what I can do. I did that more than I actually used it practically.
But I'll tell you what, that the 1D series from Canon, and they're going to have an R1 that's being released also.
Yes.
Is definitely geared towards higher speed stuff. And
that's
things
to
that
your
need
point.
your weather sealing was much better on those.
Yep.
They could take
you
a
didn't
beating.
see a Nat Geo photographer with the 5D. Right. You only saw them out there with the 1D, the D line. And I think that's to your point. What you said again, gear matters, absolutely. But the better question is not, hey, what gear do you use? Or if someone asks you, hey, what gear do you use? Your first question shouldn't be, well, let me tell you. It should be, well, what do you want to shoot?
Right.
Because that's what matters. Gear matters based on what it is you're shooting. Because you know what? You don't need to spend $6,000 on a 1DX if you're shooting newborns. Just because it's the most expensive, their best camera, it's a lower resolution because you gain what you lose in resolution, you gain in speed. Right. And you know what? If you're shooting sports, the biggest you're printing is probably you're shooting for magazines. You're shooting for online.
Right.
You're not shooting for a 60-inch, giant canvas that's probably going to go on someone's wall as a portrait photographer. So I thought that was something that, there was for me, it was definitely, there was some status, some pride of like, oh, is that, you got the 1DX? Yeah. Oh, have you seen my 200? It's a real big lens.
Oh, the 200 f2 is sweet.
There's no reason to ever own that lens, but I do.
No, and it became really trendy, especially online. There were a couple of, I think, children's photographers who made it popular even in that genre.
Yeah.
So you had a lot of people who thought, in that case, I need to have this lens.
Yeah, because
to get that look.
Yep.
And no, what you don't understand is there's other lenses that can get you that look or close that are a lot cheaper. You're just starting out. And guess what? Half of what they're doing is in post-processing.
Yeah.
The lens doesn't matter in that case.
Nope.
It is
true.
a sweet lens, though.
And again, you see it, the reason you see it on the sidelines of sports, I mean, it's fast, it's beautiful, it's all that. And you're right, though. It's funny how people then, the first person to do it in portrait photography, they were already established. So they had an extra $6,000 to go blow on one prime lens.
Yep.
But for me, it was like an icon. That was really, I still remember. I mean, a photographer I followed since day one of me starting a business, he had it. And he was like, I was fanboy. I followed his career. I've hired him to do anniversary pictures with me and my wife. Like, great nice. Dude. And like early on as a young professional photographer, I saw him and that 200 was like, that was his go-to. And in my mind, so that planted the seed. I'm like, someday when I arrive, it will be with it. Like the 200 was my like entry into like, now I've achieved something. And so it was for me. I mean, I admit that rightfully. So like back then I convinced myself I needed it. But now looking back, I can definitely say like no one needs that lens.
Yeah. And that one's, well, very few people need that lens.
And really, if you need that one, chances are you actually probably need the 300.
The 300. And, there's people, and like in sports for a long time, you have the 400 f.28.
Yeah, the 300, the 400, the whatever, that. Like those lenses make more sense than the 200 2.0 in a lot of ways because they're more unique, they're specialized.
Yep.
But at the end of the day, go grab a 70 to 200, call it a day. Save a couple grand.
Go get an 85, 1.8. You don't need to spend the extra money when you're starting out on a 1.2L.
Yeah. But yeah, I think so. That's a great point. The first question, one of the first things you should always ask as a professional when anyone comes to you and they're like, hey, like what's in your bag? Like, or what's your favorite lens? Yeah. But when anyone asks you, like, yeah, what's your go-to lens? What's your favorite lens?
Right.
You've got to. First thing I'd be like, well, for what? Like, what am I shooting?
Yeah, exactly.
A buddy, one of our mutual friends, he loves to shoot like macro photography. So if he's like, hey, what's your favorite lens? I'm like, oh, I love my 35. He's going to be like, that doesn't work for me.
No.
Oh, okay. Well, what are you shooting? Oh, I like to do macro stuff. Oh, okay. Well,
here's a 51. Here's a 50 macro. Here's a 100 macro.
Early on, the hack that I did before I owned a macro even was the 70 to 200. Zoom all the way in at 200 and then get to that minimum focal length. And it's not macro, but it's a really awesome detail lens, like shooting at 200.
Oh, absolutely.
Those are all the things. It's like, well, what's your budget? What are you going to shoot? Because all those things matter more than, I can show you my bag, but my bag is me, 15-year professional who has bought and sold more bodies and lenses. And, I went from owning 2, zoom lenses to owning 6 prime lenses back to owning 2 more zoom. I sold all my zoom lenses and owned nothing but primes. And then when I switched over to mirrorless, now I actually these zoom lenses are, maybe I'm just getting old and lazy. I don't know. But I'm like, these zooms are great. That's 28 to 70 that they came out with for the RF mount on the Canon. It's awesome. F2, like
F2, yeah, 20 to 70.
I don't take it off for studio work.
Oh, I mean, well, you know, you've got that kind of the holy trinity of lens sizes where you have a wide that's like 16 to 35, and then you have the 24 to 70 and 28 to 70 now with the Canon RF
Sure.
mount, and then the 70 to 200 2.8.
Yeah.
And those have all been staples.
Yep. There's
And
a
if you get good versions of those, you know, then you have to really decide, again, does it matter that much if I go get these primes? There's benefits to having primes, but
Yep.
it's also kind of a pain.
Oh,
Yeah. You have to switch lenses if you
Yeah.
want certain looks or certain focal lengths, where if you're shooting events, which is why I've always, like when I second shot for you, I lean pretty heavily towards having my 70 to 200 on a body. Maybe I'm lazy and that way I can just zoom in and I don't have to move my feet. But, you know, and then I'll maybe have my 50 1.2 on another, or I'll have my wide the 16 to 35 on the other, and just to give me a wider range of looks without having to worry about switching things out. And again, the gear matters depending upon what you're doing.
so if someone were looking, like, what advice would you give somebody if they were saying, like, well, how do I know? How do I choose the right gear?
Well, so it depends on what they want to do. And when I say that, so say they haven't decided what they want to shoot. They're going all around. Well, I have a puppy dog and I have 2 kids. And every once in a while when we go on hikes, I like to take pictures of the landscapes we're in. You know, maybe typical kind of parent photographer.
Yeah. I've got a lot of life going. I want to take nice pictures of things around me.
Yeah, very good. Yeah. And then that's kind of where you start. And then the next is, okay, what's your budget? You know, then you can start shifting a little left and right on the pay. You know, the gear that you're going to get. You know, whether that gear is, you know, a little bit more expensive. So maybe you want to go with like we'll talk about Canon's latest line. You know, whether you want to go for something from an R or an R5, or in between with an R6.
Yeah, there's several $1,000 difference just on that body choice.
And Canon Sony the same thing.
Yeah.
They have some great, you know, do you get an A6500 or you do the A7S3? Or do you go A9, which not a whole lot of people talk about at the moment, which is kind of surprising. I'm waiting for Sony to drop another A9 type body.
Well, they're doing the one.
That's right.
The Alpha 1. So
they did the Alpha 1.
So the 9 will probably, who knows, but but that's that's the one that more people are starting to push into, which, like you say, when Canon drops, when they drop the R1, I mean, again, I've been doing this a long time, so I have the flexibility, so a little bit more of the budget, and as well as I know what I want and need. So, like, I'll probably get an R1.
And you know, the same, and you know, and that's a good point. You know, you ask what kind of advice do you give, and it's, you know, start small. And if you're going to put your money somewhere, make it a decent lens.
Always.
Because lenses hold value.
Yeah.
But then the good thing about photography, as long as you don't wait too long, especially for bodies, but lenses hold value really, really well. You can upgrade, you can sell, you can trade in.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it's not like you're buying from scratch every time.
Yep. Yeah, you won't. Maybe 50% value ish if you sell within a decent window. But like, whenever I upgrade bodies, I'll sell either locally, Facebook Marketplace, or even I'll trade into the local like camera store. But yeah, you're right. Yeah, the body's definitely that's the technology. So it's like selling an old computer. You know, the second you buy a laptop, it's not worth what it was the day before. But hey, it's a tool. You used it, you got what you needed out of it. Don't be mad that it doesn't hold its value. But yeah, absolutely. Glass lenses hold way high. I mean, I sold a lens that I owned for 7 or 8 years for like $100 less than I bought it for.
Yeah. If you get the right lens, people will eat it up.
Yep.
A market still also for the 5D4. Step back even further.
Sure.
You want to start out, go get a nifty 50 and a 5D4. You're going to get that honestly, dirt cheap, and it's a great combination.
I would say 5D Mark II, the best 5D Canon made, hands down. And you're going to lose some bells and whistles and technology, but people to this day still like it had the color profile out of the 5D Mark II.
It's fantastic.
Yeah. And people were like, oh, well, like I think I want, I'm like, listen, you asked me the question, you gave me the budget, and now you don't like the answer I'm giving you. Well, then we're done talking. But if you have an $800 or $1,000 budget and you want to create some amazing photos, I'll give you 3 items that you need to go buy, and you can do it for probably under $1,000.
Yeah, and then just go learn photography.
Yeah,
and learn what you like to shoot.
Yeah, that's the thing is it doesn't. My photos don't look like blunt answer is, well, you're not a good photographer. That's the best advice I was ever given though. The guy who mentored me early on, he was like, hand me a 1D, hand me a 5D, hand me a point and shoot. A good photographer ought to be able to create a good photo with any camera.
Absolutely.
There's no camera that exists today that is not better than, quote unquote, better than what the old school photographers were using. I mean, Ansel Adams wasn't using the equipment he was using comparative to what we have now. I mean, the hurdles he had to overcome to create the photographs that we love and stare at and that have become icons. I mean, so that, anyone out there with a Canon Rebel has a more powerful tool in their hands than any of the greats ever used to have.
Absolutely.
So it's not like, sorry, don't blame your gear.
Even the best, how does it go? The best camera you have is the one you have on you. I mean, even cell phones these days. Oh, yeah. I have a grandson, and I have a bunch of gear. We've talked about this. I have a lot of gear.
Where's that gear sit, Jeremy?
It sits up on a,
in a nice little trophy
shelf,
case.
But I'll grab my phone. Mm-hmm. It's convenient, and I will get great shots with it.
Yeah.
And it's not just because there's great technology in the phone, but it's because I understand how to compose or crop an image or maybe adjust the brightness or where I want to be in relation to where he is. If he's sitting down playing with something, I might move. I'm just not going to pick it up and, hey, click. There you go, right? And so in that case, the gear doesn't matter because right then you're trying to capture a moment in your life.
Yeah.
And what matters more, if you want to make that a higher quality picture moment, something you might want to print or put up on your wall, is actually just learning photography basics.
Yeah.
Learning how to compose an image and where the rules, quote unquote rules, come from and what styles you might want to mimic or imitate to learn from.
So you just said something. You've perjured yourself. You just said gear doesn't matter.
I said in that case, gear doesn't matter.
Oh, okay. Okay. Right. So where do you start then? Okay, so gear matters sometimes.
Right. I think if you're going to be
where do you start?
I think if you're going to be a professional photographer and that's your goal, gear absolutely matters.
Yeah.
Not only from the fact that, you're going to want something that's high quality, that you can trust, it's reliable, it's not going to, break on you in a moment's notice. Mm-hmm. It's got some weather sealing if you're out doing events or shooting sports or...
Yeah, you don't run from a light sprinkle.
Yeah, exactly. We've gone and shot weddings. It'll start to rain and sprinkle, and we both use the Moneymaker straps, and we're standing out with our, we might cover them up a little bit. Don't get us wrong. We still like to take care of our gear, but
I'm not going to drop it in a pool, but
right, yeah, exactly. But it's not an immediate concern. But I think if you're a parent or, someone just starting or you're a student, get something that you can just learn on. Yeah. Because the quality gear isn't going to matter.
Yep.
And the last thing you want anybody to do is invest a ton of money, especially if you're advising them, on gear.
Yeah.
And then for them to just not like it or hate to carry it around.
Yeah. And that's for me. And I know, like, I've met people, there's kind of two camps, of the one camp being, and I think a lot of our conversation is more like if you're like going to do this as a professional, like if you're making money with your camera,
right,
versus just maybe like, if you're a parent or you just want to take pretty pictures of nice things. But like, if you're somebody who's like, hey, I want to go into this as maybe a professional, one of the main things, the camp that I kind of adopted and followed and built my gear up was cash in hand. Like for me personally, there's kind of, but the one side is like book a job, buy the gear. Like, and that, you know, like I booked jobs before some of my first weddings. I had one camera and one lens, and like I booked 2 weddings, and with the deposits from those weddings, I went out and bought my first L lens.
You go buy, or now even better, you can rent, which is huge.
Absolutely. Rent and try, especially with all the bodies out there, different like cameras. And if you don't know what brand, like how do I pick what brand? If you're, you know, I started out in a brand and I've stayed loyal to it. Like, I think I'm that way with a lot of stuff. Like, do I think, you know, Apple is the best brand of any? I'm like, no, but it's the stream I'm in, and it's quality. I'm not like upset about it. It's not breaking on me, so I go with it. Right. I'm not standing on some pedestal screaming to the world it's the best thing ever made, because there's downsides there's ups and downs to anything.
To everything, absolutely.
You know, I love my Canon gear, but when I see like something that Sony can do, or, you know, what, you know, Nikon.
Well, no one mentions Nikon.
No one talks about their mirrorless. Hey, it's ironic. They're the only ones, the only people shooting Nikon are still back on the D850s.
And amazingly, that's when they were the big dog, right? That's all anybody could talk was what Nikon was doing.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
and then
and that's another thing, right? So you go and invest, especially when you start, don't get hooked into a brand.
Yeah. Find one that feels right. Like the ergonomics. The buttons are where my hands
menu
wants
system.
to be.
Yeah. You're starting out, the brand isn't going to matter. Make sure you find something that's comfortable in your hands, or that you can use, that you understand the controls.
That's where Fuji's made their mark too. Their entry point, it's like a little bit more affordable. Their quality is so great for what you bang for the buck kind of thing. It's really intuitive. You know, it has in camera, like you can stylize your like camera profiles. So again, for somebody who's like, I don't really want to edit, I just want the pictures to look good straight out of a camera, like Fuji is like, here we go. Like, so yeah, there's a camera for everybody. And I think that's what's really neat about it. It's just the one. So what I was saying before is like, you have the one camp of like, okay, I'm going to like, you know what? I'm going to be a professional photographer. I'm going to max my credit card out, and I'm going to go buy 2 cameras, 5 lenses, the lights, the this, the that. I'm going to have, you know, 20 grand in debt day one. Okay. There's, you know, some people, I've heard the thought there, and they're like, listen, 20 grand as far as from starting up a business.
That's not a ton.
It's not a ton. And their thought is, if I can't make that back in my first year of business, do I deserve to be doing this? And so for them, it's a motivation. And I totally get that. Like, I won't say that's right or wrong. I get that kind of like live or die by your own hand. That's kind of a cool way to approach it. Risky, but
right.
At the end of the day,
especially these days.
At the end of the day, though, you know what? You have collateral. So if you fall on your face and you hate it, you may not make back every dollar, but you could probably pay off your bills and sell the gear off if you had to, if you just completely hated it. But yeah, the other side for me and the road I took, it was a lot slower. It was definitely like I said, whether it was, you know, book a few jobs, use the deposits to buy gear, you know, and piece by piece, build it up. If I needed a new lens, I probably had to sell an old lens. It wasn't like I was selling gear because I needed that cash to put it towards something new. And it was, piece by piece. And even to this day now, I mean, you know, we've been blessed to have a successful business. So I'm able to go out and buy larger items, but we still, you know, we wait until we have the cash. We wait until we have it, and then we go and get it. And
in that case, you know, you're really talking about, you know, then again, also a business need. Yeah. You know, and you know, as you start getting into the business of photography, whether you just want to do as a hobby, you probably shouldn't sink as much money into it until you know you're going to be serious about it. Yeah. Right. And it's a matter of investing. At the end of the day, it really depends on where you want to invest. And you know, we've talked about this in the past, and you don't have to be creative to start a photography business. You can go buy equipment.
And a book. There are 2 or 3 books. Read the books. Do your stuff. It's the science of it. Is almost more than the art of it.
You can set up the same headshots over and over again. Yeah. Even some sports shooting for youth, the volume photography that they do. I mean, you're talking a pretty simple setup, and you're just pumping kids through, whether it's schools or everything. It's all the exact same setups. Yep. And it's more about getting the kids in and selling a package and getting the same decent shot. You're not getting the highest quality as you would say if you're doing a fine art portraiture or some of the portraiture you guys do, especially here, you know. But if you're looking to just do kind of a bread and butter business, right?
And you know how much money those people make?
Yeah, and that's what you're talking about. So you're investing the money knowing what the return is and what amount of time, and then you just churn at that point.
Yeah, right? I've known couples where, you know, one of them was a decent photographer and the other was like a business person, and they just saw the opportunity of like they saw opportunity. They saw, like with what you're saying, like especially in bulk, like sports and school portraits and you name it, and they're like, so yeah, we're only charging $20 a head, but we have 3 schools and we shoot 4,000 kids.
Right.
You can do the math. That's decent money.
Yeah, and if you can do that over and over again, and you don't need the, you know, most expensive equipment.
No, and that's the beauty there is like that. I always say, like, I tell people, listen, don't get into events to make money, because event photography, you have to have the most gear of anyone. You beat up your gear, so you own the most gear, you break the most gear, and you don't get to charge at more than, like, people who sit in a studio and don't move anything can charge more than somebody who goes on location and photographs an event.
Right.
And you have to have twice as much gear, and you have to pack it up, the wear, the tear, all that. So event photography is not the glamorous, you know, thing that you do it because if you enjoy it. I mean, I got into weddings because I really enjoyed that part and that type of photography.
Right.
But yeah, now looking back and doing more studio work than I've ever done before now, I'm like, and we talk clients into it, like, listen, like, you know, we started charging a non-location fee for headshots because it's 2 hours of setup and teardown to bring all the lighting gear, the backdrops, you name it. And you know, time is money. That's a pretty basic concept within a business. Like, time isn't free.
Oh, exactly.
You know? You're not just paying me to come, you know, you're not paying me to come take 15 minutes of photos. You're paying me for the art, you know, everything that I do. And if that requires all this other setup, you know, and I think that's where the gear component, it's beyond just the camera. You know, you talked a little bit about it, but, yeah, it's even too. It's like, oh, well, what do I edit? Do I edit on a laptop, or do I have to go get a big computer?
Right. Or should I be tethered while I'm shooting this volume thing so everything's going directly to it? Are they proofing on the site? Right.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and that's all. You know, all circles into that same, like, well, what are you going to do?
Right.
Because again, they're really fast, you know, laptops that have just an SSD hard drive in it, and it can run Lightroom faster than some of these big old iMacs or, you know, large PCs that, you know, don't have that. So it's not like just bigger isn't better. You know. I was waiting for an interjection there. Drink your coffee. You know, but yeah, I think it's so multifaceted that, yes, to be a photographer, you got to have a camera.
You do. Do you have to have the best camera? No, especially not when you're starting.
Not when you're, and there isn't a bad camera on the market at this point, in my opinion.
Yeah, it's crazy. There's no better time to get into photography, honestly.
Yeah, you can get a point and shoot. Your cell phone. I mean, if you like, I tell people, like, they're like, yeah, I think I want to get a point and shoot. I mean, you can get a cheap-ish point and shoot for a couple $100. I tell some people, I'm like, hey, how new is your cell phone? Because they're like, your cell phone, I'm like, listen, if you pay a couple $100 more, get a new cell phone, and the camera on that thing is probably going to be better than that point and shoot.
Yeah. So at the end of the day, does gear matter? And the answer probably is, it depends.
That's not an answer. Put your big points bands on and take a stand.
Take a stand. If you're going to ask me, the guy who likes to buy gear.
The guy who owns more gear than anyone ought to own.
Yes, gear matters. Right?
Because I have gear for this. I have gear for that.
It depends on what you know. I can shoot a lot of different stuff.
Yeah,
right?
it's true.
And, you know, my hobby expanded from having a film camera to having a digital camera to having lighting gear to having more lighting gear to having good lighting gear, Alien Bees, and now I also have Pro Photo.
Yeah.
And before, we're talking early, Rebels, and now, hey, look, the R5's out. No, look, they're going to do a R1 and an R5C. Oh, more gear. Yes.
Ooh, that's fun.
And
this is the thing. I don't even know half of these things. That's why I have Jeremy. I don't need to Google what's coming. I just wait for Jeremy to tell me.
get more gear, doing more great stuff, and as you're expanding and you want to do.
I am excited though for the fact that I think there was like that kind of there's a long time where so like the 5D, obviously it had video on it, but it wasn't good. Then the whole idea of like this run and gun point and shoot video cameras like kind of became really popular. And so all cameras, like you had to have video on it, even though a lot of photographers are like, I wish you would focus more on the photo side of tech, and stop putting so many video heavy components. But it's really cool because like everything pressed super heavy into like the dual photo video all in one, do it all. And it's starting to come back though into specialized. Like Sony pushed it where they had like the two different A7s. One was like more focused on like slightly lower resolution but more video, and the other one was like the super high resolution. So they kind of like said, you know what, we're gonna launch two cameras side by side and one's gonna be designed for a different market. And then I'm seeing more companies, and as you just said, with Canon coming out with the R5 and the R6. Both great cameras. One big resolution, bigger price tag, tag on it. A little bit more rich, heavy on like some of the video features and things. But if you're just a photographer, you don't need the extra $1,000 price tag and the extra video features. So get the R6. It's designed for like you as a photographer. It still has video, but I love seeing this more. I love seeing this like specialized niche where brands are finally starting to say like, hey, like people don't need or people don't want to spend like all this money for stuff they don't use. And what they're probably realizing is they're jumping ship and going to other brands because like, well, I don't want to spend $4,000 on, I don't need 8K video. Right. So if that's all you're going to offer me, well, then I'm going to go over here to this other brand and, choose them. So I love seeing that trend. I love seeing that it's shifting that direction because I think it's good for the industry. I think it's good for creatives in general. So hopefully it keeps going, and that's just going to keep this whole conversation.
Absolutely.
The tagline on there's always going to be a magazine on the shelf, or there's going to be a blog post titled like the best gear of 2021, and it's gonna be the same. It's gonna be whatever Canon's new, Sony's new.
Is X brand the new Y killer?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, the R5 is the Sony killer. Right. And you know what? It's
a fantastic stills camera, but it's got a 45 megapixel sensor. You don't need that if you're doing video.
No, right. But I like it as a photographer. Exactly. So that's always technology is forever and will always be the leapfrog game. And that's kind of, as a photographer, who build his career off digital cameras, it's weird. I don't think of myself as a tech person, but really we are. Like, I mean, our cameras are miniature computers. Absolutely. That, they're not an old film camera that, had a battery and that was the only electronic component in it. Right, this whole thing it's a minute. I mean, I just updated my firmware on my lenses last night because my lenses have computers in them now. Right. Yeah. That blows my mind. Like, it's not just a mechanical thing anymore. It's a mechanical and a technological component, which is exciting. It's exciting as a professional. It's just going to keep getting better. Yeah. Like I'm still waiting for the day, future forecast. That's right. This will happen someday. That's right. When where my focusing will track where my eye looks. That's going to come. So because they have it already on that tech. They have that technology on computer screens. They do. And there was a camera, and I don't remember what, that tried that within the camera. It didn't work out great. It was too early for it. Yeah. But it'll get there. Where I look, instead of having to select focus, it's just it'll track my eye. Yeah, you'll go from the people who like having the eye focus detection of the camera on the subject side to now you're using your eye to tell the camera where to focus. Yep.
And then if you tell it to look at a face, then it's an eye, right? And then you've got all these AI technologies helping improve things.
Tell it to focus on a certain person. Right. We're just going to literally be talking at our cameras.
Camera, go shoot this wedding for me.
Yeah.
Right.
Yep. That's someday.
But someday, probably little drones flying around, just doing everything for you.
Just have a drone.
That's right.
Follow people around and then take the footage. Yeah. That's the one thing, gear. Maybe we should have another episode on when gear doesn't matter. What's more important, the gear or the photographer?
Ooh, that would be a good one. Yeah. You start delving into, what's really creative and the creative aspects of,
which matters more,
right.
Even too. Like, and I think,
well, the answer
we might agree.
Depends.
Probably not. It depends. Sometimes, Jeremy, I just want a yes or a no.
No, I'm Captain Fence Sitter at the moment, apparently.
Maybe. Could. Maybe tomorrow it's different.
Probably.
Yeah.
We'll see.
All right.
Yeah, so at the end of the day, whether or not the gear matters is going to depend on what you want to do, really. But if you want to do it long term, even as a serious hobbyist or in a business, gear is absolutely going to matter.
Yep.
It really is.
Yep.
But learn how to be a photographer.
Yeah.
That's critical.
Study the art, study the technique, and push yourself. Like, I enjoy following iPhone only accounts on social media.
Yeah, but there's talented photographers still.
Yeah, and it's
good
cool
gear
to
isn't
see.
going to make a great photographer.
No,
right.
It'll
make a good photographer better.
There you go. Yeah, you can be a bad photographer with an expensive camera. And my favorite, I always love to say, all you're going to do is take really high resolution, crappy photos.
That's right.
So cool. Good. Have fun. Spend your money, throw it out the window. And you know what? At the end of the day, if you're having fun and you have expendable cash, knock yourself out. Photography's cool, but don't get mad when you take a bad photo and blame your camera.
Exactly. You know what? If you want to do photography, get a camera and go shoot.
Yep.
And get what you can within your means. Don't overshoot it and have fun. Just enjoy photography as what it's meant to be. It really is an art. Unless you're doing it purely for business. Then it depends.
Then it's not an art.
Then it's not an art. It's the art of business versus the art of photography.
Are you talking to our listeners or are you talking to yourself right now?
I don't know. I might be trying to convince myself one way or the other at this point. Yeah. I don't know what I want to be when I grow up, Mike.
I get that. It's hard. It's a hard road, but some of us have to do it.
Some of us. And right now that's you.
I guess. You can come play though.
Awesome. I appreciate it.
All right.
Cool. Good talk.
High five.
High five.
Drink.
When I was a kid, my dad used to say, don't let anything stand in your way. Stand tall, think clear. Don't let them see ain't of fear.
Dude, look at that camera.